The throne hall trembled beneath the Alpha King's roar. For 3 relentless hours, the cries of his newborn echoed through the stone corridors, piercing, sharp, almost otherworldly. Every servant had tried. Every healer had failed. And still, the wailing continued, haunting the castle walls like the lament of ghosts long dead. King Kael Draven stood at the center of it all, the mightiest wolf in the northern kingdoms, yet powerless before a child no larger than his arm. His son, his heir. Born beneath the blood moon. Born as the last echo of his lost Luna. Enough. Kael growled, voice cracking like thunder. Leave us! The servants scattered, their fear a scent heavy in the air. The great marble doors slammed shut, leaving only the Alpha and his crying child in the hollow silence that followed. Kael's hands, hands that had ended wars and shattered rival pacts, now trembled. The pup's cries clawed through the steel in his heart. Stop! He whispered hoarsely, kneeling beside the cradle. You're safe. You're mine. But the pup cried harder, as though sensing his father's grief. Kael's chest ached with the weight of it. He pressed a palm over his face, struggling to breathe. His wolf, restless within, stirred but could not soothe. From the shadows near the door, a whisper dared to rise. Perhaps he feels your sorrow, my king. Kael's eyes snapped up. The voice belonged to one of the lowest-ranked servants, an Omega girl barely grown, clutching a cloth against her chest. Her scent was faint lavender and fear. You speak out of turn, Kael warned, his tone low. Yes, my king, she whispered, bowing deeply. But I beg you, let me try. The hall fell still. No one spoke. Even the storm outside seemed to hold its breath. The king's gaze darkened. You, he said, incredulous. You are no healer. No noble. You are Omega. The girl swallowed hard but did not look away. Then I have nothing to lose. The words struck him strangely. No one had ever dared answer him like that. Not since his Luna died. Not since his kingdom turned cold. The guards at the edges shifted uneasily, waiting for his command, to punish, to strike, to erase this insolence from memory. But Kael only stared. Her name, he remembered suddenly, Elara. One of the kitchen hands. A shadow in the lower halls. A girl who should never have been here. And yet, she stepped forward. The scent of her courage filled the air, fragile, trembling, yet radiant. He isn't ill, my king, she whispered, her eyes soft on the wailing child. He's mourning you. Kael's throat tightened. Enough, he said. Leave before I. But before he could finish, she crossed the floor. The warriors tensed, hands on blades. She didn't care. Her bare feet whispered across the marble, until she stood before the throne. Please, she said again, voice cracking with something deeper than fear. Let me try. The king's silence stretched until it hurt. Then, finally, he spoke. If you fail, he said quietly, you die. Elara bowed her head. Then let my death mean something. And she reached out her hands. The child's cries faltered the moment her fingers touched him. It was as if her warmth carried something ancient, a pulse older than law or blood. She lifted the pup carefully, his tiny body shaking, his face flushed red with exhaustion. The court gasped. 1,000 years of hierarchy shattered in that single heartbeat. No Omega was permitted to touch royal blood. Elara ignored them all. She drew the child close, pressed his head to her chest, and began to hum. It wasn't a song anyone recognized, soft, haunting, shaped like moonlight. The melody curled through the air like smoke, carrying memories of forests and fires long forgotten. And then silence. The pup exhaled, trembling once before his breathing steadied. His fingers unclenched. His small chest rose and fell in peace for the first time since birth. The hall froze. Kael, the Alpha King feared across the north, felt the edges of his power crumble. He stepped closer, his boots echoing through the silence. What did you do? He whispered. Elara looked up, her eyes wet but unwavering. I sang to him, she said softly. He wasn't crying from hunger, my king. He was crying because he could feel your pain. Kale stood there, unable to move. The words landed in his chest like truth given form. For the first time in years, his wolf bowed, not to strength, but to tenderness. By dawn, the entire castle whispered her name. The Omega who silenced the air. The girl who defied the Alpha King and lived. Kale summoned her to the throne room. The nobles demanded punishment. The laws demanded blood. But the Alpha said only, "She will stay." A shock rippled through the court. "She soothed my son," Kale continued, his tone calm but final. "And until he no longer cries, she will remain by his side." The betas exchanged uneasy glances. No one argued. Not when his voice carried that quiet authority, the kind that made even fear kneel. Elara bowed, trembling. "I serve at your command, my king." Kale studied her for a long time. "Tell me," he said, voice low, "why did you not fear death?" "Because," she whispered, "the sound of that child crying was worse than dying." For a long moment, Kale said nothing. Then he turned away, hiding the faint crack in his voice. Elara slept little that first night. The nursery had been moved to the high east tower, closer to the moon, the old matrons said, though most called it a superstition meant to soothe frightened hearts. She sat beside the heir's cradle, listening to the soft rhythm of his breath. Now and then he stirred, searching. She offered a fingerdip, and he settled, a small warmth anchoring the cold room. When the latch clicked, she startled. The Alpha King crossed the threshold without his crown or cloak, rain laid across his shoulders like a second shadow. He hesitated, as though entering a chapel. "He woke?" Kale murmured. "Only to dream," Elara whispered. "He dreams of running." A corner of his mouth shifted, something not quite a smile. He stepped closer, stopped at the cradle's edge, and rested a broad hand on the carved wolf sigil. "I do not dream," he said. "Then your heir dreams for you." Silence, then a low sound from his chest, not a laugh, not a growl. "They say Omegas are all song and softness. We are bone and breath like any wolf," she answered, surprised by her own courage. "We simply survive where sound becomes knife and kindness is contraband." His eyes found her in the moonlit hush. Gold, rimmed with weariness. "Tell me your name again." "Elara of no house." "Then the wrong house disowned you," he said, voice roughened. "I will not." She lowered her gaze. Laws were iron here. Words could become shackles. Yet the room exhaled, Heir, Omega, Alpha, and for a moment the kingdom felt almost human. The king withdrew, leaving only pine scent and the faint echo of boots on stone. Elara hummed to the moon until the tower fell entirely still. Dawn broke like a blade through hoarfrost. With it came the council. They gathered beneath banners stitched with silver thread, betas and layered leather, old nobles and wolf for mantles, a priest of the pale goddess with ash across his brow. Elara stood alone, unadorned, the child sleeping in her arms. The hall was all marble and menace. High Beta Theron spoke first. "Majesty, precedent is not parchment we may tear when grief bends us. An Omega handling royal blood violates the first tenets. If mercy is due, let it be private. But this is spectacle." Kale sat as if carved from the chair itself. "The first tenets were inked to guard the weak from the cruelty of the strong," he said. "Not to deny breath to a crying heir." Murmurs. The priest lifted 2 fingers. "Alpha King, the moon's order requires rank or chaos swallows us. If an Omega can cross the line, why lines at all? Today a cradle, tomorrow a crown." Elara kept her eyes on the child. "Fear is a fasting that eats itself," her mother used to say. "Feed it song." "Speak, girl," Theron snapped. "If you have sorcery, confess it." "I have a lullaby," she said. "And a heart that listened." A scoff from the nobles' row. Kale did not look away from her. "You heard what even I did not," he said, each word deliberate. "That is not sorcery. That is courage I forgot I had." Theron bowed stiffly. "Then write a new law, Majesty. Name this Omega, function. Give her walls, a post, a chain, anything but ambiguity. The Pack's watch. If we do not write the story, they will. Kale's gaze slid to the priest, then returned to Elara. Then hear my decree. Elara of no house is named Moonward of the Heir. She answers to the Alpha alone. She carries no lash, bears no chain, and walks no dungeon staircase. Any who threaten her will answer to the king. The hall inhaled as one. Somewhere, a banner rustled like a restless animal. Elara felt the world tilt beneath her feet. She bowed, not to iron or fear, but to the thin, impossible bridge that words had just built. Word traveled faster than winter wind. By noon, the lower courtyards burned with rumor, some bright, some bitter. Stable boys placed bets on whether the Moonward would be gone in a week. Seamstresses measured with their eyes, imagining a garment befitting neither servant nor noble. In the kitchens, the head cook crossed herself with flour and said, "Let the goddess keep that girl standing." Elara walked among the looks as though through nettles. Her new chamber adjoined the nursery, a square of stone softened by a single rug, a cedar chest, a narrow bed turned toward the window where the snowline met the sky. A basket sat upon the table. Inside, a folded blanket, white as breath, and a narrow knife, its hilt wrapped in blue thread. A note, too, in a hand she did not recognize, for swaddling. For cutting fruit. For choosing neither battle nor surrender. Elara ran a thumb along the blanket's hem. The weave was too fine for a servant's gift. She glanced at the wall. The next room's quiet told her the air slept. She should rest, count the beats of the new title inside her chest until the rhythm felt harmless. Instead, she opened the window. Below, the training yard hammered with iron. Wolves and men's forms rushed and broke and rose again. The Alpha King moved among them, not sparing himself. Elara watched in stillness. Each time he felled a sparring partner, he offered a hand. Each time he was felled, he rose without fury. Command without cruelty. Hunger without haste. He looked up only once, as if the air itself had whispered her name. Their eyes snared for a heartbeat that felt like a step taken past an unseen threshold. Elara's pulse stumbled. She drew the windows shut and pressed her forehead to the cool stone until the world slowed. Night returned with a thin, needling rain. The air woke once, twice, then settled against Elara's shoulder, breath sweet with milk. She was turning toward the cradle when a scent like old coins and cold smoke slid under the door. She stilled. The latch did not move. The nursery's fire popped, an ember cracked. Elara narrowed her eyes and listened as her kind had always listened, past the sound, into the intent. Not a step. A waiting. She laid the child in the cradle, set the white blanket near his cheek, and put the blue-threaded knife under her palm. "If you have business," she said to the empty air, "make it while the air sleeps." The shadow detangled from the corridor at last, a woman in gray, hood low. She bowed precisely, neither obsequious nor rude. "Moonward." "I prefer Elara," she replied. "Then I prefer to remain nameless," the woman said dryly. "But those above me call me Whisper." She lifted a token on a chain, the wolf's head sigil of the covert guard. "I keep the king's blind spots clean." "And I am one," Elara said. The woman's mouth tilted. "Not yet. But storms breed in clear skies. Some in the court stir old laws to weaponize them. Others stir older hungers. Your appointment has made allies and enemies of wolves who do not yet know which they are." Elara thought of the priest's ash, the beta's blade words, the way a banner had shivered as if warning. "What do you want from me?" "To live," Whisper said simply. "And to keep him living." She tilted her chin toward the cradle. "If you sense anything amiss, scent wrong, light wrong, a lullaby that tastes of iron, send for me with this." From her sleeve she produced a ring carved with 3 tiny crescents. "Turn it once for me. Twice for the king. Thrice for the pack." Elara took the ring, the metal cool as rain. "Why help me?" Whisper's eyes softened in a way that said she wasn't as empty of names as she claimed. "Because the king fights monsters in the field," she said. But the ones in hallways wear perfume. The shadow slipped away as neatly as it had formed, leaving Elara with the air, the fire, the ring, and a night suddenly too short for rest. The storm that followed did not fall from the sky. It walked into the throne room on measured feet the next morning. A delegation from the Heir March, a border pack with old treaties and older grudges, bowed to the king. Their alpha, Lord Heir, wore a smile polished to a weapon's shine. "Majesty," he purred, "the North honors your grief. We bring tithes, steel, and an offer to bind houses, my niece for your future sealing when your heir comes of age. Custom. Stability. Law." Kale's answer was even. "We accept tithe and steel. The offer we decline. My son will not be bartered like a horse." The marble cooled by several degrees. Heir's smile did not thaw. "Then perhaps it is we who must decline tribute, oaths, and patrol on your eastern flank. Stability is a bridge. Remove stones, invite rivers." Theron bristled. The priest's eyes glittered. Kale did not look at them. "The bridge stands," he said. "With or without your vanity stones." Heir flicked invisible dust from his cuff. "Without our stones, Majesty, rumor floods. They reach even Heir Pine, that the cradle in your tower is guarded by an Omega's song, not a Luna's line. If your heir sleeps by lawlessness, is he a prince, or a prophecy's orphan?" Elara heard the report later from Whisper, who recited words like arrows, straight barbed. "They paint the boy as a moonless pup," Whisper said. "And you as the night that hides him." Elara swallowed. "Then we light a fire the night cannot devour." "How?" "By truth," Elara said, surprised to hear the certainty in her mouth. "By letting them see what the law tried to blind, that an alpha's strength is not lessened by the Omega who steadies it." Whisper snorted softly. "You will turn poets into soldiers if you keep speaking like that." "Or soldiers into poets," Elara said, and for the first time since her naming she laughed, a small, unafraid sound that made the tower warmer than the fire could. The first attack came as music. Twilight bled violet across the city. In the banquet hall below, minstrels tuned string and bone flute for a feast meant to soothe Heir Pine pride. Elara walked the gallery above, the air bundled against her chest, tiny fists tangled in the edge of her mantle. She hummed the moon hymn beneath her breath, letting sound be a shawl for the child. A note slid wrong through the hall. Not flat. Not sharp. Sour. Elara stopped mid-step. Another note, braided with the first, carried a wet metal taste to her tongue. She had never been taught the old wards, never held the priest's ash. But every Omega born under an open sky learns the grammar of harm, how it leans into a room, how it gnaws at rhythm. She slipped to the stair and peered into the hall. The flautist's eyes were too still. The bowing of the viol strings had a hitch, like breath caught against a scream. The song itself was sweet as a cradle rhyme, and threaded with a needle so fine it could stitch sleep into a grave. Elara turned the ring once. Whisper appeared 3 heartbeats later, impossible and inevitable. "Point," she said. "The second viol," Elara breathed. "And the flute." Whisper moved without moving, one moment beside Elara, next like a rumor at the flautist's shoulder, a hand gentle on his wrist, a second blade gentle at his ribs. The music tripped, righted, died as the hall rose in confusion. Kale stood then, and when he stood the room obeyed. "Bring them," he said. Under the gallery's shadow Elara pressed the infant closer, heart breaking a sweat. The flautist wept. The second viol nodded to questions no one had yet asked. In the antechamber the story unwound, coined from Heir Pine, a melody pricked with poppy resin, a plan to lull the tower entire, and never relinquish the lull. Kale's rage came quiet, which is how true storms do their work. "Chain them," he said. To Heir's envoy, waiting in the doorway like a stain. "Carry my regards to your alpha. And this message, the next song you send will be answered by iron on your gate." The envoy paled and fled. Whisper sheathed her knife. Elara felt her legs again. She touched the baby's brow and found no fever there, only the soft, stubborn heat of living. When she lifted her eyes, the king was already looking at her as if she were a lighthouse and he a ruined coast, remembering the pattern of return. Reprisals bloomed like frost. Iron Pine sent 3 letters and 2 spies. Theron answered with doubled watches and patrols that cut the hillsides into disciplined geometry. The priest petitioned for a public blessing to erase the stain of irregularity. Cale agreed to the blessing and refused the erasure. "We wash what is filth," he said to the priest, "not what is breath." On the appointed night the courtyard filled with torches, citizens' banners, and that special hush a crowd makes when it hopes and fears in equal measure. The priest raised his ash bowl. Smoke wrote a pale scripture on the cold air. Elara stood with the air on the dais. A murmur rippled outward at the sight, Omega in plain blue, king at her shoulder. "By order of the moon," intoned the priest, "we sanctify the air and the hands that hold him." Elara braced for salt disguised as sanctity. Instead, the priest startled her with mercy. He dipped his thumb in ash and traced a crescent on the child's brow, then on Elara's, then, after a breath spent swallowing pride, on the king's. "Rank is a ladder," he said, voice carrying. "But ladders lead to roofs, and roofs are for shelter." A cheer broke, ragged but real. In the angled light Elara saw men who had buried sons bite their lips and smile. Women who had buried wolves press hands to hearts. The pack did not forget law. But it remembered hunger and relief, and which one it preferred. After, when the torches guttered to stars, Cale walked her back to the tower. He did not reach for the cradle. He only walked, the way a cliff walks beside a sea. At her threshold he paused. "Tonight they saw what I see," he said. "That the Alpha's crown is a poor thing without the Omega's voice." Her throat closed. "Majesty." "Cale," he said softly. The name tasted forbidden. She did not repeat it. He did not ask her to. He bowed, an Alpha King, and left her there with a heart the size of a different country than the one she had woken in that morning. Spring pressed its thumb into the drifts, and the mountain gave way. Meltwater braided the roads. Traders returned to the city like bright birds arguing with coins. Peace never stands alone in a market square, she brings cousins. Among them, trouble, veiled and smiling. It arrived in the form of parchment sealed with a thorn. Whisper slid it open and hissed between teeth. "An edict," she said, handing it to Cale. "Signed by 3 border alphas and the Iron Pine court. They demand trial. For the Omega." Elara stood very still. "Charge?" "Enchantment," Whisper said. "And trespass beyond station. They name you moon consort by spell and bid the king prove otherwise. It is a trap shaped like a door." Cale's eyes went winter-hard. "Then we do not walk through it. We carry the door to them and break it over their heads." Theron rubbed his brow. "Majesty, a trial gives them pageant, not justice. But to refuse lends weight to their lies. Choose the manor and the ground." Elara stepped forward before terror could argue her back. "Choose the old manor," she said. "The hull circle." 3 heads turned. Whisper's mouth quirked. "You surprise me less and less." Elara kept her voice even. "The hull circle is no duel. It is witness. Each speaks truth before the pack at moonrise. The pack answers in chorus. If I have bewitched the air, the song will sour. If I have not, it will rise." Cale studied her as if the decision had already been carved in his ribs, and he was only now reading it. "Very well," he said. "Send riders. At full moon we call the circle." Whisper nodded, already elsewhere in the mind, arranging shadows. There inside a soldier's sigh, the kind that counts against a ledger no one sees. Elara folded her hands to stop their trembling. She had asked for a song to judge her. The moon always listens. The question is who else is listening when she answers. Outside, the city bells tolled the hour. In the cradle the air reached in sleep, fingers opening and closing as though grasping at a future he had not yet been taught to desire. Elara bent and kissed his knuckles. "We will sing," she whispered. "And they will hear." The Alpha King placed his palm on the cradle's rim, and for the first time, covered her hand with his. not as ruler or ward. As wolf to wolf before a sky that measures all vows. The moon rose sharp as silver, and the house circle gathered on the plains outside the city walls. Every pack in the north had sent at least one witness, scouts with frost in their beards, priestesses draped in wolf-tooth necklaces, elders whose eyes gleamed with old hunger. Torches drew a ring around the field. At its center waited the Alpha King, the Omega Girl, and the cradle where the heir slept under a cloak of fur. Elara felt the world watching through 1,000 eyes. Every instinct begged her to bow, to disappear into the grass, but the song within her chest would not still. Whisper stood behind her, silent shadow. Theron took his place to the right of the king. Even the priest came, robes flaring like night itself. Kale lifted a hand for silence. You called for proof, he said, his voice carrying over wind. You will have it. The Moon Ward stands accused of bending the heir's soul with forbidden song. She claims innocence and offers the house circle as witness. Let the packs decide. The crowd shifted, curious, blood-hungry. A drumbeat began, slow ritual. Elara stepped forward, heart hammering against ribs. I do not wield spell, she said. Only breath. I do not command wolves. I listen when they cry. Her eyes swept the ring of faces. If that is treason, then mercy itself should hang beside me. A murmur rippled. Kale nodded once, and the priest signaled. The drums stopped. Only the wind remained. Then sing, the priest intoned. Elara closed her eyes. The first note left her throat trembling, uncertain. But as it found the air, it steadied, low, human, true. The melody rose, looping through grief and courage, weaving into the hush like a thread of light. Somewhere in the circle, a wolf howled back, deep and resonant. Another joined, and another, until the plain itself became one vast voice answering hers. No sourness. No discord. The sound lifted whole. The priest fell to his knees. The moon bears witness, he whispered. The song is pure. Kale exhaled, shoulders easing for the first time in months. The crowd roared, some in joy, some in outrage, but the verdict was sealed in sound. Elara opened her eyes to see the Alpha King staring at her, as though seeing dawn for the first time after years of winter. The aftermath smelled of smoke and snow. Packs broke apart into muttering clusters, but none dared challenge the circle's ruling. Truth sung beneath the moon was law older than any crown. Still, danger lingered. Power rarely yields without plan. Kale dismissed the witnesses and ordered the court to reconvene at dawn. When the field emptied, he turned to Elara. You risked death again. She met his gaze without flinching. I risked silence. It frightened me more. His breath hitched, quiet. You speak like prophecy, yet you claim no gift. I have none, she said, lifting her chin. Only the will to keep breathing when the world forgets how. He studied her for a long moment, then gestured to the sleeping child. And he breathes because of you. Whatever they call you tomorrow, which, saint, fool, you will not walk unguarded. I have no fear, she said. I have enough for us both, he replied. He offered his arm, not as king to subject, but as equal to equal, and together they crossed back through the torch-lit gates. From the parapet, Whisper watched their figures vanish into the castle, the baby's soft cry drifting after them like a promise the night refused to swallow. Morning found Silverkeep alive with movement. Messengers flew out in all directions, carrying the tale of the moon trial. Some said the king's Omega had sung with the goddess herself. Others claimed the heir's cry had awakened the dead beneath the hills. Whatever version reached the borders, it bore one truth: the Alpha King stood beside the girl no law could chain. Inside the high tower, Elara woke to birdsong. The child gurgled happily beside her, tugging at the fringe of her sleeve. For the first time since she'd entered the castle, she felt something like belonging. Yet peace in a palace is a brittle thing. A knock sounded, 3 short, 1 long. Whisper entered, hair damp from fog. They're quiet, she said. Too quiet. Iron Pine's envoys ride home without word. That never means surrender. Elara frowned. Then they plan another strike? Or an alliance? The South smells opportunity when the North bleeds. Whisper hesitated. And there's this. She handed over a scrap of parchment, edges scorched. In jagged ink, the moon favors who she will. But even moon's wane. Elara traced the words. A threat? A prophecy, Whisper said grimly. And prophecies breed war. Kale arrived moments later, armor half-buckled, eyes shadowed from sleeplessness. So it begins, he murmured, reading the note. They could not break the song, so they'll break the singer. Elara squared her shoulders. Then let them try. The moon still rises. He looked at her, something fierce flickering behind restraint. If they come, they will not find you alone. Outside, the wind shifted, the first scent of rain, or blood, carried from distant hills. The Alpha King turned toward the window, his voice low, steady. Prepare the pack. Tonight, we defend more than a kingdom. We defend the reason it still breathes. The night before battle always smelled the same, iron, pine, and the quiet fear no warrior ever named. The fortress below Silverkeep blazed with torches as the Alpha King's banners were raised. Storm clouds rolled in from the west, thunder pulsing like a heartbeat beneath the sky. Elara stood at the high window of the nursery tower, the heir asleep in his cradle. From here, she could see Kale walking among his soldiers, his cloak snapping in the wind. Every motion was deliberate, every order calm. Yet she could sense the tension in him, the war between duty and something deeper, something human. Whisper appeared beside her, silent as shadow. They move before dawn, she said. Iron Pine and the southern packs have joined under one banner. They'll strike the eastern ridge first. The king means to meet them head-on. Elara's fingers tightened on the sill. He'll fight them alone if it means protecting his pride. Whisper's eyes flicked toward her. He'll fight them because he must. Pride just keeps him warm in the cold. Elara turned, voice steady though her pulse raced. Then we make sure he returns. Whisper tilted her head. You mean to go to the field? I mean to be near enough that the moon can hear me if he falls. The spy smiled faintly. You're either blessed by the goddess or mad. Both, Elara said, lifting the child. But blessings and madness often share the same song. The army marched beneath a silvered dawn. Wolves in armor of black and steel. Archers wrapped in furs. Mages from the temple carrying braziers of blue flame. And at their head, Kale Draven, Alpha King of the North, rode his grey warhorse through the mist. Elara watched from the hilltop with the infant cradled close. She could feel his tiny heartbeat against hers, as if the boy already knew his father faced death. He'll come back, she whispered, unsure if she was promising the child or herself. From the distance came the first clash of metal, then a sound too large for mortal throats, a chorus of howls, the war call of wolves. Lightning arced across the horizon. The scent of blood tainted the air. Whisper crouched beside her, hand on her blade. They've breached the lower ridge, she muttered. The king's flank is holding, but barely. Elara's breath caught. Her wolf stirred beneath her skin, restless. The instinct to stay safe warred against something greater, bond, love, fate. If he falls, the heir's heart will break. The bond between them is blood and spirit both. If he dies, the child will follow. Whisper's face hardened. Then you know what must be done. Elara closed her eyes and began to hum. The lullaby, the same forbidden song that had silenced the heir's cries, rose again, soft but sure. The melody slipped through stone and storm, carried by wind toward the battlefield. On the field, Kale fought like a creature forged from fury and faith. Each strike was poetry in motion, each roar a vow to the goddess who had cursed and blessed him in equal measure. But the enemy's numbers swelled. Then, he felt it. A pulse through the air, faint but undeniable. The sound of her voice. Elara's song. It wove through the chaos like moonlight through branches, wrapping around his heart, steadying his breath. His wolf surged forward, emboldened. The army behind him lifted their heads, their howls aligning with the melody carried on the wind. Even the dying rose for one last strike, following that impossible harmony. Kale's sword met Vair's in a clash that split sparks and sky. The rival Alpha sneered. Still hiding behind your Omega witch? Kale bared his teeth. Behind her? No. I fight because of her. He drove his blade through Vair's chest. The southern banner fell. The enemy ranks scattered. The song reached its crescendo, and silence followed. When Kale looked up, the storm had broken. Moonlight poured over the field. And in the wind, faint but clear, came her whisper, "Come home." He returned before dawn, armor cracked, eyes hollow. The courtyard erupted in cheers, but Kale saw only the tower. He climbed it without rest, the weight of victory and exhaustion pressing against him. Elara stood at the window, the air in her arms. Her gown was torn, her hair unbound, silver in the moonlight. When she saw him, the composure she'd worn all night shattered. "You came back," she breathed. "I heard you," he said simply, voice rough. "Your song led me through the blood." She stepped forward, trembling. "I didn't know if it would reach you." "It did." He reached out, brushing a lock of hair from her cheek. "It always will." The child stirred between them, his small hand reaching out. Kale took his son in his arms, holding him for the first time without fear. The warmth of the pup's heartbeat broke whatever walls remained between them. Elara whispered, "The moon guided us tonight." Kale's gaze met hers. "No," he said softly. "You did." The war was over, but peace has teeth too. Rumors bloomed faster than spring flowers, of an Omega who sang armies to victory, of an Alpha King who bowed to love beneath the moon. The council trembled at the thought, whispering of bloodlines tainted by compassion. Kale ignored them all. Each evening he climbed the tower to see his son, to hear Elara's voice. What began as duty became need, what began as need became truth. One night, as thunder rolled far away, he said quietly, "They will call this weakness." Elara smiled faintly. "Then let them fear it. Weakness doesn't build kingdoms. Love does." He looked at her for a long time. "The court will demand I choose, law or you." "Then choose what makes you sleep without ghosts," she said. He reached for her hand, fingers trembling for the first time in years. "Stay by my side, Elara." "Not as servant. As Luna." Her breath caught. The title was sacred, forbidden for an Omega to claim. Yet in that moment, beneath the moon that had witnessed all their defiance, she whispered, "Yes, my Alpha King." And far above, the goddess who had watched their story from the first cry to this quiet vow smiled, because even she knew that songs like theirs never truly end. The word Luna moved through the castle like a bell struck once and heard for miles. Some knelt when Elara passed, others turned their faces away. High Beta Theron bowed without flourish, jaw set tight as a drawstring. Whisper only offered a thin, real smile, the kind that meant, "Now the knives are coming out." The council met at dusk. Torches hissed, rain stitched the windows, and the chamber smelled of iron and decision. Kale stood, shoulders squared, crown forgotten on the table. "I name Elara, Omega-born, as Luna by my right as Alpha King," he said. "By deed, by witness, by the breath that kept our heir alive." A noble with white braids, Lady Marys of Ridgefall, stepped forward, voice like cold water. "Then bind her to the throne under law. Let her pass the trial of veils, the questions of blood, the rites of endurance, the vigil without fire. If she fails, the moon herself has spoken." Kale's gaze did not flinch. "And if she passes? Then we kneel," Mary said, simple as a blade's truth. Around her, heads nodded, some eager for failure, some quietly hungry for a new world. Elara did not look away. "Name the veils." "3," Marys replied. "First, lineage, you will stand before the archives and speak your name loud enough to wake any ghosts who claim it. Second, flesh, you will run the wolf roam, barefoot, unshifted, the cliff path under moon, while the pack howls your courage home. Third, silence, you will keep the vigil at the highest parapet, alone, with no fire, no food, and no song. If dawn finds you standing, you are Luna. Cale opened his mouth, to refuse, to rage, but Alara touched his wrist. I accept, she said gently. Let the old laws test what the old laws fear. The priest, ash-dark eyes thoughtful, inclined his head. The moon takes no offense at courage. He murmured. Set the veils. The city will watch. Whisper's hand brushed Alara's elbow as they turned to go. I'll sweep the shadows, the spy said. But remember, trials don't break omegas. Men do. The Hall of Records waited like a sleeping beast. Stone shelves climbed into darkness, and under glass lay scrolls older than dynasties. A scribe slit his palm and pressed a drop of blood to an iron dish. Sigils woke and glowed like embers. Speak, he said. Alara stepped forward. Alara, daughter of no house. She began, then stopped, throat tightening as if a hand had closed there. The room pressed nearer, listening. She remembered a winter blue hut, a mother's laugh, a lullaby over chipped bowls. No sigil for love. No crest for hunger. Only breath. Only will. My mother was Mara, she said, voice steadying. A midwife who traded sleep for other people's dawns. My father is a name I do not have, a face I do not need. I belong to the night that carried me, to the pack that feeds the child I hold, to the moon who measures wolves by heartbeat, not by house. The sigils flared bright, then settled, warm as coals banked for morning. The scribe blinked as if waking from a kind dream. The archives accept. He murmured, baffled and certain at once. No falsehood. No missing debt. He sealed the page with wax and crescent. Veil 1 passed. Outside, the city had gathered like a sea. When Alara emerged, a murmur rose and fell and rose again, breaking on her like surf, not all welcome, not all cruel. On the steps, Cale waited, bareheaded in the wind. He did not touch her. He did not need to. The space between them felt threaded with intention. Ready? Whisper asked, eyes on the cliff path that saw more funerals than festivals. Alara tipped her face to the moon. I've walked sharper edges, she said softly. When you are born Omega, the world is a cliff. The wolfroam curled along the mountain like a silver ribbon, narrow, slick with spray, and honest about what a misstep costs. Drums sounded from the city walls, slow, heart-wide. Wolves howled from the terraces as Alara set her bare feet to stone. She did not run to prove anger or to deny fear. She ran because the air had once clutched her finger like a promise, because the Alpha King had learned to hold his son without breaking, because somewhere a girl in a kitchen was humming tonight and needed the world to be a place where humming mattered. The path narrowed. Wind shoved, rock bit. Below, the river flung itself at boulders and sang of ruin. Alara's breath burned cold, steady, 4 counts in, 4 out, song without sound. Halfway, a loose stone turned treacherous. Her ankle rolled, pain flashed white. She hit a knee, caught herself on bloody palms, and tasted copper. A cry rose from the city, collective, helpless, but she pushed to her feet. Again, she told her body. We have outrun other winters. She fixed on the next white-painted marker and the next, until the path widened and the drums quickened. On the final rise, the wind died as if the mountain itself were listening. Alara reached the crest, set blood-wet hands to the cairn stone, and lifted her face. The city's howl rose, that braided chorus she had trusted once to judge her, not sour now, not split, but whole. Theron slammed a spear butt against the parapet in salute. The priest's ash bowl smoked like blessing. Cale did not cheer. He exhaled, and in that breath lived relief, fear, pride, and something that wanted a future. Whisper appeared at Alara's side with a water skin and a glance sharp as glass. A stone rolled on a path we inspect daily. She murmured. Accident, or set hand? Ask your shadows, Alara said, drinking. I'll answer the moon. Night peeled back from the highest parapet like thin ice from a lake. The vigil of silence began. They left her with nothing but sky. No cloak. No flame. No food. No song. Cold as a patient hunter. It stalked Alara's bones, testing doorways. Hunger abraded thought into spark and ash. Below, the city thinned to the occasional cartwheel, a distant dog's bark, a child's midnight cry. She listened, not to comfort herself, but to remember why breath matters. Midnight's center found her swaying. She imagined the kitchen girl's hum. The priest's ash thumb on a baby brow. The ring on her finger, 3 crescents, cool against skin. She did not turn it. She would not spend the king's guard on loneliness. "You are not alone," she told the wind. "You stand in the company of every wolf who ever kept watch." The hours lengthened like ropes. Once, boot leather rasped beyond the stair. She did not move. "If you come to push," she whispered to the dark, "know this, I have already fallen and learned the ground." The footsteps withdrew, swallowed by stone. At last the east bled pale. A single bird argued with dawn. The first ray touched the parapet and made a thin halo of frost at Alara's feet. She did not lift her hands in triumph. She simply stood, back straight, throat open to the fragile light. Below, the city erupted. Bells. Howls. Banners thrown wide like laughter. Kale reached her at the stair top, breath ragged from taking them too fast. He stopped 1 step lower and looked up at her, as he had looked up at a moonlit window with a lullaby in it, as he had looked up from a battlefield when a song found his heartbeat. "Luna," he said. "Alpha King," she answered, and the titles, for the first time, felt like true names, not weights. The coronation burned bright. Candles crowded the nave. Polished shields along the aisle made coins of light. The priest lifted the silver circlet, its crescent points wicked beautiful. "By howl and law," he intoned. "By breath and bond." The interruption was almost elegant. A crash of glass high in the clear story. A whisper shaped like a hiss. Smoke poured, sweet at first, then iron bitter. Wolves in the nave staggered as sleep bit their knees. Whisper moved before the first body hit stone. "Up!" she barked, dragging Alara sideways as a second vial shattered on the altar, hissing out a cloud that made Kale's eyes water. Theron threw his cloak over the air. The priest flung ash into the smoke and coughed a prayer that came out as a curse. From the rafters, a figure uncoiled and dropped, masked, lean, wrists wrapped in wire. He went for Alara with a blade the color of winter rivers. Kale crossed the space with impossible speed. Steel flashed, met steel, screamed. Whisper's knife took the assassin at the hamstring even as Kale's pommel broke the mask. A face, young, clever, terrified. Not Irepine. Ridgefall. Lady Mary stepped from the crowd, hands lifted, voice level. "Hold!" Swords wavered like reeds in wind. Mary's looked at Alara, not with victory, not with venom, but with a sorrow older than politics. "I set the veils to test steel," she said quietly. "Not to spill it. This is not my order." Whisper's eyes narrowed. "Your house sigil threaded his mask." Mary's did not blink. "Ridgefall has wolves who mistake zeal for oath. Name me fool if you like, but not murderer." She turned, lifted her chin to the room. "We kneel," she said, voice carrying. Because she stood. And Mary's, first, sank to one knee. Around her, wolves who had waited for failure lowered themselves, some stiff, some swift. The smoke thinned as the priest's chant finally found a groove in the air. Kale tossed the assassin to guards with orders for cells, not graves. Then, with hands that did not shake, he took the circlet and set it on Alara's brow. That night, rain stitched the city back together. The assassin sang nothing in his cell, which is how Whisper knew he carried a second song. "He was bought," she said, dropping a ledger on Kale's table. "Not by Irepine alone. Southern caravans. Old coin. New hands." Kale turned the pages without seeing them, then shut the book and looked at his Luna. The circlet had left the faintest crescent on her skin. The air slept against her shoulder, his breath tucked neatly into hers. "Law brought daggers to our altar," he said. "So we answer with a law that breaks their hands." Alara stepped closer to the table and laid her palm atop the map of the realm. "Write it," she said. No child of the moon will be measured unworthy by birth. Omega, beta, alpha, different chords, one song. Any hand that strikes down care, be it lullaby or shield, strikes the crown. Theron, silent until now, nodded once, soldiers assent. The priest, standing in the doorway with ash and rain in his hair, spoke as if to himself. Perhaps the goddess tried everything else and left compassion for last. We were too slow to reach it. Cale dipped his pen. The new law took shape in strokes that felt like war and wedding both. Outside, thunder walked away into other mountains. Inside, the air stirred, smiled, slept. When the decree was done, Cale read it aloud, voice low, certain, and sealed it with the crescent of kings. He looked to Elara. She did not smile. She only breathed in, breathed out, and the room remembered how. Tomorrow, Whisper said, sheathing her knife, I'll carry copies to every border stone. Today, Elara answered, turning toward the window where the moon rose fat and silver. We teach the city a new lullaby. She began to hum, a tune she had never sung before, woven of trial and vigil, of cliff and choir, of smoke thwarted, of a child that would never cry alone again. The Alpha King closed his eyes and listened, the way a ruined coast learns the lighthouse by heart. And the moon, unblinking, wrote their names in a light no storm could unmake. By dawn, the law was everywhere, posted on doors, carved into the great hall's pillars, murmured in streets as if the words themselves were alive. All wolves are born beneath one moon, and none shall be measured by rank alone. Children recited it as a rhyme. Traders painted crescents on their wagons for luck. The old order shuddered but did not fall, it adapted, the way rivers change course without losing their will to run. Cale walked the ramparts in quiet awe. He had forged peace with war's hands, yet what Elara had done was far greater. She had taught the north to sing without fear. Below, the courtyard filled with voices, servants, guards, even Omegas standing shoulder to shoulder with betas. For the first time, the kingdom sounded like unity. Elara joined him, the air held against her chest, his eyes bright and curious. He listens to the noise, she said. I think he knows it's for him. Cale turned, brushing a knuckle against the boy's tiny cheek. He'll grow in a world you built, he murmured. One that I only ruled. She smiled faintly. Then rule it still, my Alpha King. But rule with gentleness. Let strength and mercy share the same throne. Cale's gaze softened. Stay by my side when the old wolves snarl. Remind me when I forget. I will, she promised. Even kings need lullabies. Seasons shifted like breath. Snow retreated into the mountains. The rivers ran fast and gold. The air, named Lucin, for the light that follows storm, took his first steps beneath the same moon that had once judged them. The castle no longer echoed with cries, only laughter. But peace, even tender peace, invites jealousy. In the southern territories, broken alphas whispered of a crown softened by song. One called for rebellion. Another for alliance against the king bewitched by his Luna. Whisper returned from a border meeting with blood on her sleeve and bad news on her tongue. The southern packs move again, she said, tossing Cale a token etched with strange runes. They call it the Sun Pact. They mean to prove that light burns brighter than the moon. Cale's jaw clenched. And if I let them come? They'll make examples, Whisper said flatly. Of you? Of her? Of what you've built? Elara stepped into the council room, her calm cutting through the tension. Then we meet them not with sword or howl, she said, but with truth. If they wish to see what we've become, let them walk our halls. Invite them to the Moon Festival. Theron blinked. You'd welcome those who plot against you. Yes, Elara said. Because hatred only feeds on distance. Bring them close, and they must see what their fear denies them. Cale studied her, torn between pride and dread. You gamble with trust. She met his eyes. So did you when you let an Omega hold your son. The festival came beneath a sky of fire-colored clouds. Lanterns floated like captured stars. Musicians tuned their flutes, and the smell of roasted herbs filled the courtyard. Wolves from every border gathered, friend and foe alike, each forced to walk through the gates of Silverkeep unarmed, by the king's decree. Elara greeted them one by one, her voice unshaken. The sun-packed alphas glared, expecting weakness, but found only grace. Lucen toddled through the crowd, clutching his father's finger. The sight disarmed more hearts than Kael's armies ever had. When night deepened, Elara stood on the balcony, the moon high behind her. "We were born from the same howl," she said, voice carrying over the drums. "Not enemies, not ranks, wolves. Tonight we honor the breath that binds us, not the blood that divides us." The crowd grew still. Even the southern alphas, proud and cold, listened. Then came the sound, the lullaby. Soft, luminous, woven with the harmony of hundreds of voices that had once feared to sing beside her. The moonlight bent around the castle, brighter than the torches below. Kael's hand found hers. "You've done it again," he whispered. "Turn battle into song." Elara smiled. "Maybe that's all peace ever was, a song the world forgot how to finish." Later that night, when the guests had gone and the torches burned low, Kael stood at the window with his Luna. The moon spilled silver on the floor between them. Lucen slept nearby, his breathing even, the faintest hint of a smile on his lips. "Do you ever wonder," Kael said quietly, "why the moon chose us?" Elara leaned against his shoulder. "Maybe she didn't choose. Maybe she just listened." He turned to her then, hands cupping her face, voice rough. "If I ever forget this peace, remind me of the sound of our son's first laugh. If I ever raise my hand in anger again, silence me with that song." "You won't forget," she said. "The moon remembers for us." He kissed her forehead, a vow more than affection, and for a long time they simply breathed together, the rhythm of wolves who had survived grief, defied law, and built something sacred out of ruin. Outside, the moon slipped behind a cloud. But the kingdom below glowed on, silver and alive, its people singing softly as the wind carried their voices to the farthest hills, proof that even an Alpha King's world could be healed by the courage of a single, trembling Omega who dared to sing. Years passed, and the castle that had once echoed with weeping now hummed with life. The banners of the moon and wolf hung side by side, silver and black intertwined like breath and shadow. The kingdom thrived under Kael and Elara's reign, the Alpha King and the Luna who had turned sorrow into song. Lucen grew taller, curious and bold. His laughter filled the halls where his mother once knelt as a servant. He followed his father into council meetings, though his eyes often wandered to the window, chasing light instead of power. "He's like you," Kael would say, half proud, half fearful. Elara smiled. "No, he's better. He has your strength without your walls." But beneath the peace, whispers began again, this time not from enemies, but from allies. Nobles grumbled that the king spent too much time among the common folk, that the Luna's laws made Omegas forget their place. Even the priest, once gentle, murmured that mercy had softened the North's claws. Kael heard it all but said nothing. Until one night, as thunder gathered beyond the mountains, he found Elara staring from the balcony, her eyes clouded with thought. "They're restless again," he said softly. She nodded. "Change frightens those who were born on top of it. They will turn on us." "Then let them," she said, lifting her gaze to the moon. "If power cannot survive kindness, it deserves to fall." The unrest began small, a border skirmish, a missing caravan, a noble's assassin caught in the capital and silence before naming who sent him. Whisper moved like smoke through it all, collecting truths like knives. "They're not trying to overthrow you," she told Kael one evening. "They want to divide you from her. They whisper that the Luna speaks with the goddess herself. That you're only her voice." Kael's hands tightened around the map on his desk. "Then they've forgotten whose voice ended their wars." Elara entered as his temper flared. "They don't fear you," she said. "They fear what you've become." "What I've become?" "Human," she said simply. Kael exhaled, the fight leaving him like air from a wound. "If they threaten you..." She placed her hand over his. "They can't. They already lost the moment they made me their story. He studied her face, the faint lines of time near her eyes, the calm strength beneath it. And what story do you tell now, my Luna? She smiled faintly. One where the Alpha learns that love is louder than any roar. Lucin turned 16 beneath a blood moon, the same omen under which he had been born. The city celebrated for 7 days, feasts, games, offerings to the moon goddess. On the final night, Kale led his son to the courtyard, where Alara waited in white robes, a crown of woven silver leaves on her hair. It's time, Kale said, for the heir to meet the Pax as their future Alpha. Lucin looked between them. And what if I'm not like you? Kale's voice softened. Then be like yourself. The moon doesn't shape wolves to match its face, only to reflect its light. When Lucin stood before the crowd, he did not roar. He did not lift his hands in dominance. Instead, he bowed to every rank, Alpha, Beta, Omega alike, and said, My parents built a kingdom that listens. I would rather inherit their silence than another scream. The crowd erupted, not with howls, but applause, strange, human, beautiful. Kale felt tears sting his eyes. Beside him, Alara whispered, He's already the leader we prayed for. Peace returned for a time, though not the loud, triumphant peace of parades, the quiet kind that grows roots beneath old ruins. Kale and Alara walked through their gardens often, content in the soft weight of years. But the goddess does not grant endless summers, even to those who serve her. One night, when the moon hung low in amber, Alara woke coughing. The sound was wrong, too deep, too fragile. Kale sat up instantly, his instincts sharper than reason. Alara? She waved him off with a weak smile. Just a chill. Days passed. The cough worsened. The healers said her blood had been touched by the cold of the vigil, the night she had stood without fire years ago. A wound that never truly healed, only slept. Kale refused to believe it. The moon would not take her now. But the moon, ever silent, said nothing. At night he sat beside her bed as she slept, listening to her breath, counting each one as if by sheer will he could hold them in the world. Lucin came quietly, laying his hand over his mother's. Will she wake? Kale swallowed hard. She always does. But even kings lie when love demands it. Winter arrived early that year. Snow piled on the walls like folded wings. The Luna's illness spread slowly but inevitably, a fading of light, not a sudden dark. She grew too weak to stand, yet her spirit remained untamed. She asked for the window open each night so the moon could find her. Kale stayed beside her always, his armor abandoned, his crown gathering dust. You should rest, she whispered once. I will, he said. When you wake to tell me a story. She smiled faintly. Then you'll never sleep. Lucin knelt at her other side. Mother, the Pax pray for you. The city sings your song. She brushed his cheek with trembling fingers. Then promise me something, my son. Anything. When you lead, listen more than you speak. Love more than you command. And when the world cries, don't silence it, understand it. He nodded through tears. I promise. Alara turned her eyes to Kale. You taught them strength, she murmured. I only showed them the heart behind it. You showed me, he said, voice breaking. The moon rose full, and her breath slowed. For a moment she looked utterly peaceful, the same girl who once defied an alpha's wrath for a crying child. Then she whispered, Tell the moon I sang. And the world fell quiet. The kingdom mourned for 7 days. Wolves from every territory came to bow before the Luna's resting place, not in fear, but gratitude. Even the old priest said, The moon does not take. She gathers. Kale did not speak through the morning. He walked the halls alone, tracing the paths where she once sang. On the 7th night, he climbed the tower where it all began. The wind was sharp, the same scent of lavender and smoke that had once carried her courage to him. He lit a single lantern and placed it on the window ledge. You saved me twice, he whispered. Once from war, once from myself. Behind him, Lucin entered quietly. Father, he said, the council waits. Kale turned, eyes silver under the light. Then let them wait a little longer. He looked at his son, taller now, strong, but still gentle. Lead them well, Kale said softly. The world needs your kind of alpha. And you, father? Kale smiled, faint but true. I will find her. The moon owes me one dance. They say that on the night the Alpha King vanished, the moon burned brighter than it had in centuries. No one saw him leave, though the guards swore the great gates opened on their own, as if the goddess herself had called him. In the morning, Lucin ascended the throne, young, steady, his mother's voice in his blood. The people did not weep. They sang. For their Luna had taught them that endings were only songs changing key. And sometimes, when the wind turns soft and the night is clear, the wolves of the north lift their heads and howl a tune that sounds almost human, the lullaby that once silenced the kingdom's grief. They say if you listen long enough, you can hear two voices woven within it, one strong as thunder, one soft as starlight, and between them, the faint laugh of a child. For the moon never forgot the Alpha King and the Omega who sang. She only gave them a place where the song could go on forever.